I watched my mother-in-law throw my suitcase down the marble steps like I was garbage. My husband stood there recording it, laughing. They had no idea that suitcase was empty on purpose. Because everything I actually owned, including the £8 million company they thought was his, was already locked in my name. They thought they were humiliating me. They had no idea I just bought their house. Let me tell you how I planned this. But first, hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you will change how you see betrayal, revenge, and your own worth forever. Comment checkmate if you're ready for this story. Welcome to Reality Stories Hub. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Know that moment when you realize your whole life has been a lie? I'm standing here today to tell you about mine. My name is Sarah Bennett, and this is the story of how I went from being treated like nothing to owning everything they tried to take from me. Let me paint you a picture. 5 years ago, I was living in London, working as a graphic designer and brand consultant. I wasn't rich, but I was good at what I did. Really good. I could look at a struggling business and see exactly what it needed to succeed. Colors, logos, brand identity, marketing strategies. It was like I could see the future of what a company could become. That's when I met James Harrington at a business networking event in central London. God, he was perfect. Or at least, that's what I thought. Tall, well-dressed, charming in that way that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. His family owned properties all across England. His mother, Victoria, ran their investment company. His sister, Olivia, worked in their family business. James pursued me like I was something precious. Flowers delivered to my office every Friday. Weekend trips to the countryside. He'd show up at my favorite coffee shop with my exact order, smiling like he'd won the lottery just by seeing me. I fell for it. Hard. Because back then, I didn't know that love could be a weapon. We got married after dating for a year. The wedding was at their family estate, this massive place with gardens that went on forever and a house that looked like something from a period drama. I should have seen the warning signs. Victoria planned everything without asking me what I wanted. My family, normal working people from Manchester, sat on one side looking uncomfortable in their best clothes. James's side wore designer everything and looked at my family like we were there to serve them. But I ignored it all. Because I was in love. Or maybe I was just in love with the idea of being loved. The mask came off about 3 months after the wedding. James stopped being romantic. He'd come home late, barely speak to me, and spend hours in his office working on what he called his big project. Victoria started calling me at 6 in the morning, demanding I come help her organize events or redecorate rooms in her house. And Olivia made it crystal clear that I wasn't good enough for their family name. She'd make comments about my clothes being too cheap, my hair not being done at the right places, my family not understanding their world. Every day, little cuts that made me feel smaller and smaller. But the worst part? They treated my work like it was a hobby. I'd come home exhausted from helping businesses rebuild their entire brand identity, and James would hand me his laptop. "Babe, can you just look at this quickly?" he'd say. That quick look would turn into 3 hours of me designing his materials while he watched television. Victoria would call my job cute, like I was playing at business instead of building real companies from the ground up. They made me feel worthless. And for a long time, I believed them. Then one night, everything changed. James was in the shower, and his phone kept buzzing on the bedside table. I wasn't trying to snoop, I swear. But I saw Olivia's name flash across the screen with a message that said, "Can't believe she thinks you'll actually credit her for any of this." My heart stopped. I picked up that phone, and what I found made my blood turn to ice. James had been working on a luxury lifestyle brand for months. High-end home goods, exclusive memberships, premium experiences for wealthy clients. He talked about it constantly, called it his ticket to success that was his own, separate from the family money. But here's what I didn't know. Every logo I'd designed just for fun. Every brand color palette I'd helped him choose. Every marketing strategy I'd mapped out while he said he was picking my brain. I was building his entire company, and he never planned to give me any credit. The messages between James and Olivia were cruel. She'd written, "Father always said never put a woman's name on anything valuable. Keep her useful for now, but once it launches, you won't need her anymore." I sat on that bed reading message after message. Victoria had written, "Make sure all the trademarks and business registration are only in your name. These creative types always try to claim they contributed." James had responded with laughing emojis. They had jokes about how eager I was to help, how I'd probably work for free forever just to feel included. There were messages about investor meetings I knew nothing about, contracts being drafted, a whole company being built on my ideas, my designs, my strategies, while they planned to list me as an assistant if they mentioned me at all. I didn't cry that night. I didn't throw the phone across the room or scream at James when he came out of the shower. Instead, I did something smarter. I smiled when he got into bed, kissed him goodnight, and started planning the most strategic revenge of my life. If they wanted to play chess, I was about to show them I'd been studying the game my whole life. And I never lose. The next morning, I went to work like everything was normal. But during my lunch break, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Patricia Stone, the best intellectual property solicitor in London. I told her everything, showed her the messages, explained how I'd created every single element of James's brand. She looked at me over her reading glasses and said, "Darling, do you have proof you created all of this?" I nodded. Every design file had my name on it. Every strategy document was saved on my personal computer with timestamps. I had emails where James asked me specific questions about branding, and I'd given him detailed answers. I had everything. Patricia smiled and said, "Then let's make sure you keep what's yours." Over the next 6 months, I became a different person. And I mean that in the best way. On the surface, I was still the same Sarah. Still showed up to Victoria's dinner parties with a smile. Still listened to Olivia's nasty comments about my shoes without fighting back. Still stayed up late helping James with his brand development. But underneath, I was building a fortress they'd never see coming. First, I registered my own company, Bennett Creative Agency. I filed it in a different city so they wouldn't accidentally discover it. Then I took every piece of work I'd created for James's luxury brand, and I registered it under my company's intellectual property. The logos, the color schemes, the marketing strategies, the brand identity, everything. All time-stamped and documented as my original creation. I created an even better version of the brand. A premium lifestyle company that would actually work, that would actually attract the high-end clients James dreamed of. And I kept it locked away on my private servers where only I had access. The version I gave James? It looked beautiful. The designs were stunning. But they were incomplete. Like giving someone a car with no engine. It would impress people in photos, but it would never actually run a successful business. It would fall apart under real pressure, and only I knew why. Because only I understood how it actually worked. I started documenting everything else too. I recorded conversations on my phone when they didn't know. Saved every text message where they disrespected me or discussed James's company that I'd built with my own hands. Took screenshots of emails. Created a paper trail so clear that no lawyer in the world could argue against it. And the whole time, I played my role perfectly. The grateful wife. The helpful daughter-in-law. The woman who didn't know her own worth. James's big launch event was scheduled for March 20th. He'd been preparing for months. Practicing his presentation. Getting custom suits tailored. Victoria had already planned a massive celebration party and invited all of London's elite. Olivia had been posting on social media about how her brother was about to change the luxury industry. The arrogance was breathtaking. But I let them have it. I even helped James design his presentation materials, making sure they looked impressive while keeping the actual working brand strategy locked away where he couldn't touch it. 2 weeks before the launch, James told me I needed to sign some paperwork. Standard legal stuff for spouses when one person is starting a business. Liability protection, asset agreements, boring business documents. He barely looked at me when he pushed the papers across our kitchen table. "Just sign where the tabs are," he said, already looking back at his phone. What he didn't know was that I'd had Patricia review every single document first. And she'd added one small clause buried on page 52 in dense legal language. It stated that I retained full intellectual property rights to any creative work I personally produced, regardless of marital asset laws. James signed without reading. His lawyer signed without catching it. Victoria notarized it without question. And just like that, I had legal ownership of everything that mattered. Signed and witnessed by the very people trying to steal from me. I filed for divorce exactly 1 week before James's launch event. But I did it quietly through a lawyer in another city. And I made sure the papers wouldn't be served until after his big day. I wanted him to have his moment. His confidence. His celebration. Because the higher they climbed, the harder they were going to fall. And I wanted them at the very top when I pulled the rug out from under them. During that week, I moved my real belongings out of our house bit by bit. Important documents, photos of my family, my grandmother's jewelry, anything that actually mattered to me. I put it all in a storage unit across town, registered under my company name. The clothes in my closet? I replaced most of them with cheap things from charity shops. That designer handbag Victoria had given me for Christmas, the one she loved to mention cost thousands, I sold it and bought a knockoff for 50 quid. Because I knew them. I knew their pride and their cruelty. I knew eventually they'd try to humiliate me. And when they did, I wanted to be ready. I wanted them to think they'd won. The morning of James's launch event, I watched him put on his expensive suit and practice his opening lines in the mirror. "Today changes everything for us," he said, kissing me on the forehead like I was a child. He had no idea how right he was. Just not in the way he thought. I smiled and told him I believed in him. Then I got in my car and drove to that same launch event. But I wasn't going as his wife. I was going as his competition. The event space was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Thames. Elegant furniture arranged perfectly. About 60 investors, journalists, and industry leaders filled the room, champagne glasses in hand, waiting to see the next big thing in luxury branding. James stood at the front near a massive screen, looking every bit the successful entrepreneur. Designer suit, confident smile, speaking to a small group of investors like he owned the world. He didn't see me slip in through the back. Nobody did. I was just another person in business attire, blending into the crowd with my portfolio bag. The presentation started, and I have to give James credit. He'd memorized my words perfectly. He talked about the gap in the luxury market, the opportunity for authentic, elevated experiences, the revolutionary approach to high-end lifestyle branding he'd developed. The audience nodded along, asked good questions, seemed genuinely impressed. Then came the moment where he'd show them the actual brand identity. The logos, the marketing materials, the complete visual presentation of his company. He clicked his laptop. The screen went black for a moment, then flickered. He clicked again. An error message popped up. You could see the sweat starting on his forehead. He made a joke about technology being unpredictable. Tried to restart the presentation. It crashed completely. The audience shifted uncomfortably. One man in the front row said, "Did you test this beforehand?" James stammered. Made excuses about the projector, about software updates, about anything he could think of. But it was painfully clear to everyone in that room that he had no idea how his own materials worked. He couldn't fix it, couldn't even explain what was wrong. Just kept clicking buttons randomly like that would magically solve the problem. That's when I stood up. Every head in the room turned toward me. James's face went completely white. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" I walked to the front of that room like I owned it. Because in a way, I did. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the confusion. My name is Sarah Bennett, and I'm here to show you the actual working brand presentation, along with some information about who really created it." A woman near the front, an investor named Rachel Morrison, leaned forward. "I'm sorry, who are you exactly?" "I'm James's wife, and I'm the brand consultant and designer who created every single element he just failed to present." I connected my laptop to their system and launched my presentation. It worked perfectly. Smooth, professional, stunning. The complete brand identity for a luxury lifestyle company that would actually succeed. Then, while they watched, I pulled up my evidence. The design files with my name and timestamps going back months. The strategy documents from my personal computer. The emails where James asked me how to solve specific branding problems, and I gave him detailed answers. The text messages between him and Olivia discussing how to keep my name off everything. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Rachel looked from the screen to James, then back to me. "Mr. Harrington, did you create this brand?" James tried to lie. Stuttered something about us working together. About marriage meaning shared success. About how couples support each other. I cut him off. James can't tell the difference between a brand strategy and a grocery list. Every creative decision, every design element, every marketing approach you see was created by me. And I have legal documentation proving it. I handed Rachel a folder. Inside was the intellectual property registration under Bennett Creative Agency, dated 7 months prior. Also included was the spousal agreement James had signed 2 weeks earlier, which clearly stated on page 52 that I retained sole ownership of any creative work I personally produced. Rachel opened the folder. Read the documents. Looked at her colleagues. Then she looked at James with the kind of cold disappointment that's worse than anger. "Mr. Harrington, you've wasted our time. This presentation is over." James tried to explain, tried to fix it, tried to save himself. But it was done. The investors started gathering their things. Journalists were typing furiously on their phones. And then Rachel turned to me. "Ms. Bennett, would you be available for a meeting tomorrow morning? Because unlike your husband, I believe you actually have something worth investing in." I scheduled the meeting right there. 9 o'clock the next morning, her office in Canary Wharf. Then I walked out while James stood there, his perfect launch in ruins, his big moment destroyed, and his wife, the woman he'd so badly underestimated, walking away with everything he thought was his. By 5 o'clock the next day, I had investment offers from 3 different firms. I chose Rachel's. £8 million for 25% of my company. Better terms than James ever dreamed of getting. I signed the contracts in front of lawyers, had everything properly registered, and I posted one single photo on social media. Just my hand signing the papers with the caption, "Built by women, owned by women, funded on our own terms." Victoria called me 19 times that night. I didn't answer. James showed up at the flat I'd secretly rented 2 months earlier. I didn't open the door. Olivia sent me pages of text messages calling me every horrible name you can imagine. I blocked her, because I didn't need to engage. I'd already won. The next morning, James's lawyer called my lawyer to discuss the divorce. They wanted to negotiate, to find a fair settlement, to keep things quiet. Patricia laughed and said, "Your client signed away his rights. My client is taking half of every marital asset as the law allows. And she's keeping her company because he literally gave it to her in writing. We'll see you in court if you'd like, but I promise you'll lose." They tried to fight anyway, but they never stood a chance. They hired an expensive legal firm, filed motions claiming I'd stolen James's ideas, tried to argue that as his wife, anything I created belonged to him too. But every single piece of evidence supported my story. The judge looked at the timeline, looked at the documentation, looked at the signed agreements, and ruled in my favor on absolutely everything. James was ordered to pay my legal fees. Victoria had to sell properties to cover their lawyer bills. And Olivia's trust fund took a serious hit when the family's reputation collapsed. But that's not even the best part of the story. Let me take you back to something that happened 2 months after the launch event disaster. After the divorce was filed, but before it was finalized. I had to go back to their family estate one last time. My grandmother's necklace was still there, locked in their safe. It was legally mine, a family heirloom, and the court had ordered them to return it. I pulled up to that massive house in my new car. A beautiful Range Rover I'd bought with my first investment payment. And there was Victoria standing at the top of the front steps, holding one of my old suitcases. Olivia stood next to her with her phone out, recording. James was in the doorway with a drink in his hand, smirking. Victoria threw that suitcase down the steps. It bounced, came open, and cheap clothes scattered everywhere. "That's all you're worth," she screamed. "Rubbish clothes for a rubbish woman. You thought you could humiliate my son? You thought you could steal from this family." I didn't move. Just watched that suitcase settle on the ground. Watched them laugh and record me. Watched them think they'd finally gotten their revenge. Then I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Turned the screen toward them. "That's my account balance. £8 million. What's yours, Victoria?" Her face changed. The color drained right out of it. James stopped laughing. Olivia lowered her phone. I walked up those steps, past the scattered clothes I didn't care about, and stood in front of all 3 of them. "Your son didn't create anything. He stole my work, and I took it back. The investors who rejected him? They funded me. The company he thought was his? It's mine. Legally and completely." I paused and smiled. "And this house? That's the best part." I pulled out another document from my bag. "Victoria, you mortgaged this property 9 months ago to invest in James's venture. The one that doesn't exist anymore. You're 4 months behind on payments. The bank started foreclosure proceedings last week." Her hand went to her chest. She actually stumbled backward. "But don't worry," I continued. "I bought the debt. This house belongs to me now. You have 30 days to vacate." Victoria collapsed into a chair right there on the front porch. Just sat down like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. Olivia started screaming, calling me every vile name she could think of. But her voice sounded far away and powerless. And James? He tried to grab my arm. Tried to say something about how we could work this out. How I didn't have to do this. How we used to love each other. I pulled my arm away and looked him straight in the eye. You had a brilliant woman who would have built empires with you. Instead, you tried to use her and throw her away. That's not on me. That's on you. Then I walked into that house, went to the safe, took my grandmother's necklace, and left. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. I got half of everything we'd accumulated during the marriage, which honestly wasn't much, because James had been living off his family's money and trust fund. But I didn't need their money. I had my own. My company officially launched in May. Within 3 months, we had 20 major clients. Within 6 months, we were valued at over £50 million. I hired an amazing team, mostly women who'd been underestimated in their careers. Started a mentorship program for female creatives who'd been stolen from or overlooked. And that estate, I didn't buy it to live there. I bought a gorgeous penthouse in central London with views of the entire city. I bought their family estate and turned it into my company's headquarters. Renovated every single room. Put my company logo on the front gate where their family crest used to be. Created beautiful offices where my team could do their best work. Every single day, I walk through the door they threw me out of. And I run my company from the rooms where they made me feel small. 6 months ago, James applied for a job at one of my competitor agencies. They called me for a reference since I was listed as his spouse during the relevant time period on his CV. I told them the truth. He has no real skills. Takes credit for others' work. And I wouldn't recommend him for any position that requires integrity or actual talent. Last I heard, he's working in his uncle's property management office. Doing paperwork. Making a fraction of what he used to spend on suits. Victoria had to close her investment firm. Too many clients pulled out when the story became public. Olivia moved to Scotland to live with distant relatives. They all scattered like shadows when the light came on. And me? I'm living my best life. Running a company I built with my own hands. Working with incredible people who value what I bring to the table. And every morning when I wake up, I remember that I did this. I took back what was mine. So why am I telling you all of this? Why am I sharing the most painful and triumphant period of my life with complete strangers on the internet? Because I know I'm not the only one. I know there's someone watching this right now who feels small, who's being used, who's giving their best work, their best ideas, their best self to people who don't value them, who are made to feel like they should be grateful for the scraps while someone else takes the credit. And I want you to know something. You're not crazy. You're not being too sensitive. You're not asking for too much. If someone is using your talent, your creativity, your intelligence, and trying to make you feel like you should be thankful for the opportunity to be exploited, that's not love. That's not partnership. That's theft. I spent a year of my marriage feeling worthless. A year believing that maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I should just be grateful that someone from their world wanted me at all. Maybe my work really wasn't that valuable. And those thoughts almost destroyed me. Because when you're with people who constantly make you feel less than, you start to believe it. The comments about your clothes, your background, your family, your work, they add up. Day after day, little cuts that make you bleed in ways nobody can see. But here's what I learned. And please, if you take nothing else from this story, take this. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. Read that again. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. James, Victoria, and Olivia couldn't see my value. But that didn't mean it wasn't there. It meant they were too arrogant, too entitled, too blinded by their own egos to recognize what was right in front of them. And when I finally stopped trying to make them see it, when I stopped shrinking myself to fit into their narrow view of who I should be, that's when everything changed. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to plan some elaborate revenge scheme. That's not the point of this story. The revenge was satisfying, yes. Watching them lose everything while I gained everything was poetic justice. But that's not what saved me. What saved me was realizing that I could save myself. I could document my worth, protect my work, build my own path. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need them to finally see my value. I just needed to see it myself and act accordingly. And that's what I want for you. Whatever situation you're in right now, whether it's a relationship, a job, a family dynamic, whatever it is, if someone is making you feel less than, making you question your worth, using your talents without giving you credit, please hear me when I say this. You have options. You have power. You might not see it right now, and I understand that. I didn't see it for a long time either. But it's there. Start documenting things. Keep records. Save emails. Take screenshots. Not because you're planning revenge, but because you're protecting yourself. Because you're building evidence of your own value that nobody can take away from you. Start building something that's yours. Whether it's a side project, a savings account they don't know about, a skill you develop in private, create something that belongs only to you. Something they can't touch or control or claim credit for. And start believing in yourself even when nobody else does. Especially when nobody else does. Because the world is full of people who will underestimate you, who will try to use you, who will try to make you small so they can feel big. But you don't have to accept that. You don't have to stay small. You don't have to keep giving your gifts to people who treat them like garbage. My company is worth over £50 million now. I employ 37 people. I've worked with some of the biggest brands in Europe. I've been featured in business magazines and asked to speak at conferences. But you know what I'm most proud of? It's not the money. It's not the success. It's not even the look on their faces when they realized I'd won. It's the woman I became in the process. The woman who learned that she didn't need anyone's permission to be powerful. The woman who stopped asking for a seat at the table and built her own table instead. The woman who turned pain into power and humiliation into motivation. That woman was always inside me. She was there when I was crying in my car after Victoria's cruel comments. She was there when I was working until 2 a.m. on James's projects while he slept. She was there when Olivia made me feel like I wasn't good enough. She was always there. I just had to stop being afraid and let her out. So if you're in a situation where you feel trapped, where you feel used, where you feel like you'll never be more than what they say you are, please remember this story. Remember that the woman who got her suitcase thrown down those stairs is the same woman who now owns those stairs. Remember that the wife who was supposed to quietly accept being stolen from is now the CEO who decides who gets a chance and who doesn't. Remember that transformation is possible. That justice is possible. That you can go from feeling worthless to knowing your worth and making sure everyone else knows it too. It won't be easy. It wasn't easy for me. There were nights I cried myself to sleep. Days I wanted to give up. Moments I was terrified that my plan wouldn't work and I'd end up with nothing. But I kept going. And I won. And you can too. Not because I'm special. Not because I'm smarter or stronger or braver than anyone else. But because I decided that I was worth fighting for. That my work mattered. That my life mattered. That I deserved more than being someone's unpaid, uncredited ghost worker. You deserve more too. So if this story resonated with you, if you saw yourself in my struggle, if you felt that spark of recognition when I talked about being made to feel small, then please take this as your sign. Start planning your exit. Start protecting your work. Start building your own empire, even if it starts as just a dream and a folder of documents nobody else knows about. Because the best revenge isn't hurting them. The best revenge is becoming so successful, so happy, so fulfilled that they become irrelevant. They become a footnote in your story instead of the author of it. That's what I did. And if I can do it, so can you. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And please remember your worth. Even when nobody else does. Especially when nobody else does. You are valuable. You are talented. You are enough. And one day, you're going to walk through doors that used to be closed to you, and you're going to own them. I promise.